May 18, 1995. The legendary Abbey Road Studios in London was buzzing with the kind of electric anticipation that only emerged when multiple generations of guitar legends gathered in one sacred space to celebrate rock music's greatest influences. The occasion was a special recording session for the Hendrix Legacy tribute album, bringing together some of the most iconic guitarists in rock history, including Eric Clapton, Slash from Guns N' Roses, Jimi Page, and several other masters who had built their careers on the foundation that Jimi Hendrix had established decades earlier. In the center of Studio 2, the same room where the Beatles had recorded their most famous albums, sat Jimi Hendrix's actual 1968 white Fender Stratocaster, the very instrument that had created some of the most revolutionary guitar sounds in music history. The guitar had been carefully preserved and was being displayed as both inspiration and challenge for the assembled musicians, each of whom would have the opportunity to perform a tribute using this piece of rock and roll history. But when 37-year-old Prince Rogers Nelson walked into the studio wearing his signature purple jacket and quietly asked if he could quote, take a turn with Jimi's guitar, the reaction from the room full of rock legends was immediate and unmistakable. Skeptical laughter, raised eyebrows, and the kind of polite but dismissive attitude that suggested they saw him as a talented pop artist who was clearly out of his element in the world of serious rock guitar. What happened in the next 8 minutes would not only silence every doubter in that historic studio, but force Eric Clapton himself to ask Prince for guitar lessons, while Slash would later describe the experience as watching someone channel the ghost of Hendrix himself and then take it to places even Jimi never imagined. If you want to discover the moments when Prince proved that true musical genius transcends any single genre or expectation, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. What you're about to witness shows that the greatest artists don't just master their own style, they can master anyone's style and make it even better. The gathering at Abbey Road had been organized by veteran music producer George Martin, who had worked with the Beatles and countless other legendary acts. Martin had conceived the tribute album as a way to demonstrate how Hendrix's influence had shaped multiple generations of guitarists, specifically choosing Abbey Road because of its historical significance and legendary acoustics. The assembled guitarists represented different eras and styles of rock music, but all shared common reverence for Hendrix's revolutionary approach. Eric Clapton, now 50 and widely regarded as one of the greatest blues rock guitarists of all time, had been particularly vocal about his admiration for Hendrix's technical innovation. Slash, the 29-year-old guitarist whose work with Guns N' Roses had defined hard rock for a new generation, had built his entire playing style around Hendrix's foundation. Prince had been invited somewhat reluctantly, after George Martin insisted that any comprehensive tribute needed to include artists from outside traditional rock guitar. Hendrix influenced everyone, Martin had argued, not just rock guitarists. His impact crossed all genre boundaries. However, the other participants had been skeptical about Prince's inclusion from the beginning. While they respected his commercial success and acknowledged his musical talent, most saw Prince primarily as a funk and pop artist whose approach was fundamentally different from the blues rock tradition that Hendrix had revolutionized. That week, 28-year-old music journalist Rebecca Taylor had been granted exclusive access to document the sessions for Guitar World magazine. She was particularly interested in exploring how different artists interpreted musical influences and had been following Prince's career with growing fascination as he continued demonstrating mastery across increasingly wide ranges of musical styles. The atmosphere in Studio 2 was both reverent and competitive, with each guitarist aware they were being measured against both Hendrix's legacy and their peers' interpretations. The presence of Hendrix's actual guitar added extra significance. This wasn't just any tribute performance, but an opportunity to create music using the very instrument that had produced some of rock's most revolutionary sounds. When Prince arrived around 2 p.m., he was characteristically quiet and observant, spending considerable time listening to other guitarists, performances, and studying the legendary Stratocaster. Eric Clapton had just completed a soulful interpretation of Little Wing that drew enthusiastic approval, while Slash had delivered a powerful version of Purple Haze that showcased his signature style. "That's how you honor Hendrix," Clapton said after Slash finished. "You respect the foundation he built, but you bring your own voice to it. You can't just copy what he did. You have to understand why he did it and find your own way of expressing those same emotions." It was then that Prince approached George Martin and quietly asked if he could have his turn with the guitar. Something about his manner, combined with knowledge that he was primarily known for funk and pop rather than traditional rock guitar, created a subtle but noticeable shift in the room's atmosphere. As Prince walked toward the guitar stand and carefully lifted Hendrix's Stratocaster, several guitarists exchanged glances that conveyed both curiosity and skepticism. They weren't being malicious, but there was obvious sense that Prince was about to attempt something outside his expertise. "This should be interesting," Slash whispered to Jimmy Page with a slight smile. "Let's see what the Purple Rain guy can do with some real rock and roll." Prince spent about 30 seconds adjusting the guitar's position and testing its feel, running his fingers along the fretboard and playing a few quiet chords to familiarize himself with the instrument's response and tone. The watching musicians noted that he handled the guitar with obvious respect and familiarity, but they remained skeptical about whether his funk-oriented playing style would translate effectively to Hendrix-style rock. "What are you thinking of playing?" Eric Clapton asked, genuinely curious about Prince's approach to the tribute. "I thought I'd start with Voodoo Child," Prince replied simply, "but I want to take it somewhere different, somewhere Jimmy might have gone if he'd had more time." Before we reveal what happened when Prince began playing Hendrix's own guitar, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated because people only knew you for one thing, even though you had skills in completely different areas? How did it feel to prove them wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Prince positioned himself at the microphone and placed his fingers on the guitar's strings. For a moment, the studio was completely quiet except for amplifier hum. Then Prince began to play, and everything changed. The opening notes of Voodoo Child, Slight Return, emerged with power and authenticity that immediately commanded attention. But this wasn't a simple cover. Within seconds, it became clear Prince was channeling something deeper than anyone expected. His left-hand technique was flawless, his tone perfect, and his understanding of Hendrix's harmonic and rhythmic approaches was so complete that it seemed as if he had been studying nothing but Hendrix for years. But what truly amazed the watching musicians wasn't just Prince's technical mastery of Hendrix's style. It was how he began to expand and evolve the song while maintaining its essential character. Around the 2-minute mark, Prince started incorporating elements that were distinctly his own, funk rhythms that complemented rather than competed with the rock foundation, harmonic progressions that added complexity without losing the song's raw power, and melodic variations that seemed to anticipate where Hendrix might have taken his style if he had continued developing. Eric Clapton, who had been standing with arms crossed and skeptical expression, gradually moved closer to the amplifiers as Prince continued. His expression shifted from polite attention to genuine amazement as he realized he wasn't witnessing a competent tribute performance. He was hearing someone demonstrate guitar mastery that exceeded what most rock guitarists could achieve, even in their primary style. Slash had stopped his conversation with Jimmy Page entirely and was staring at Prince's hands, trying to understand how someone known primarily for funk and pop could demonstrate such complete command of blues rock technique and feel. "This is impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was unmistakable. Prince was not just playing Hendrix's style authentically, he was improving on it. The performance reached its climax when Prince began a guitar solo that lasted nearly 3 minutes, and showcased techniques combining Hendrix's foundational innovations with Prince's own musical vocabulary. He played passages technically demanding enough to impress the most serious rock guitarists, while maintaining the emotional intensity and creative fearlessness that had made Hendrix revolutionary. When Prince finally brought the song to a close, the studio was silent for several seconds. Then Eric Clapton began applauding, slowly at first, then with genuine enthusiasm. "That was extraordinary," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "I've been playing guitar for 40 years, and I've never heard anyone capture Hendrix's spirit so completely while still making it their own." Slash approached Prince with obvious excitement and respect. "Where did you learn to play like that? That wasn't just good. That was like watching Hendrix himself, but with 40 more years of evolution. How is that possible?" Prince set the guitar back in its stand with the same careful respect he had shown when picking it up. "Jimi was one of my first influences," he explained. "I've been studying his approach since I was a teenager, not just copying his licks but trying to understand his musical thinking and his creative process. I wanted to honor what he created while also exploring what he might have done if he'd had more time to develop." Now I want to ask you something that might change how you think about musical mastery and artistic evolution. When have you realized that true expertise means not just learning techniques, but understanding the principles behind them so deeply that you can take them in new directions? The most amazing part of this story is still coming. What happened next surprised everyone, including Prince himself. Eric Clapton, one of the most respected guitarists in rock history, approached Prince with an unprecedented request. "I know this might sound strange," Clapton said, "but would you be willing to show me some of those techniques you were using? Particularly the way you were combining the blues rock foundation with those funk elements. I've been trying to incorporate different styles into my playing for years, but I've never heard anyone do it as seamlessly as you just did." The request was remarkable. Clapton was not only much older and more experienced than Prince in traditional rock guitar, but was universally acknowledged as one of the instrument's master practitioners. For him to ask Prince for instruction represented a level of humility and recognition that demonstrated how completely Prince's performance had shattered all preconceptions. Prince was clearly moved by Clapton's request. "I'd be honored to share anything I can," he replied. "But honestly, what I was doing was built on everything I learned from listening to you and Jimi and B.B. King and all the masters. I'm just trying to take those foundations in different directions." Slash made his own request. "I'd love to learn from you too. The way you were bending those notes and creating those harmonic textures, that's something I've never encountered before." It was like watching someone speak a completely different musical language that somehow made perfect sense. Over the next hour, the session transformed from a competitive tribute recording into an impromptu masterclass, with Prince demonstrating techniques that combined elements from blues, rock, funk, and jazz in ways the other guitarists had never considered. He showed Clapton how to incorporate rhythmic displacement techniques that could add funk grooves to traditional blues progressions. He demonstrated to Slash how certain picking techniques could create harmonic overtones that added complexity without sacrificing power. But perhaps most importantly, Prince shared his philosophy about musical learning. "Every great guitarist I've ever studied has something unique to offer," he explained. "The goal isn't to sound exactly like any of them, it's to understand what made each of them special, and then find ways to incorporate those insights into your own musical voice." The recording session produced what many critics later called one of the most innovative Hendrix tributes ever created. Prince's performance became the album's centerpiece, not because it was the most technically impressive, though it certainly was that, but because it demonstrated how Hendrix's influence could continue to evolve and inspire new directions in guitar music. The session's impact extended far beyond the immediate recording. Eric Clapton began incorporating elements from Prince's approach into his own performances, leading to some of the most creative music of his later career. Slash started experimenting with funk rhythms and harmonic techniques that had never appeared in his previous work. For Prince himself, the experience reinforced his belief that musical boundaries were artificial constructs that limited rather than enhanced artistic expression. The recognition he received from rock guitar legends validated his approach and encouraged him to continue pushing boundaries of what was considered possible in popular music. Today, the recording of Prince's Hendrix tribute is considered essential listening for serious guitar students, not just because of its technical excellence, but because it demonstrates how deep understanding of musical principles can enable artists to honor traditions while still creating something entirely new and personal. The lesson from that afternoon at Abbey Road continues to inspire musicians across all genres. True mastery isn't about proving you're better than others, but about demonstrating that excellence can emerge from unexpected sources, and that the greatest artists are those who remain humble enough to learn from anyone who can expand their musical understanding. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of Prince's most remarkable demonstrations of musical mastery. If this story inspired you to explore skills outside your comfort zone or to approach learning with greater openness and humility, please subscribe and share your own experiences of surprising others with unexpected abilities in the comments below.